The rain poured down in relentless sheets, drumming against the asphalt and creating shimmering reflections of neon lights flickering from the towering buildings above. The city remained vibrant, people rushing with umbrellas, taxis splashing through puddles, and the distant hum of life that never seemed to pause. But amidst the chaos, Michael walked with heavy steps, his shoulders weighed down by the invisible burden of despair. He had once believed in stability, in the comfort of a structured life, but that belief shattered the day he lost his job. His once promising career crumbled like a house of cards, leaving him adrift in a sea of uncertainty. Each day blurred into the next, a monotonous cycle of job searching, receiving rejection after rejection, and returning to the suffocating silence of his empty apartment. He had always thought loneliness was just an emotion, something people exaggerated. But now he understood. Loneliness was a living thing, a shadow that clung to him relentlessly, whispering doubts into his ears and making the world feel colder than it was. As he walked down a quieter street, he passed by a small park. The once lush greenery was now drenched, its branches sagging under the weight of the relentless rain. He hadn't intended to stop, but something caught his eye, a shadow beneath a tree. At first, he thought it was just a pile of discarded rags, but then it moved. Looking closer, he realized it was a dog, curled up in the rain, shivering violently. Its fur was a tangled mess, dripping with rain, and its ribs subtly outlined beneath its thin layer of flesh. But it wasn't the dog's physical condition that made Michael pause. It was its eyes, hollow, tired, and filled with a sorrow he knew all too well. Michael hesitated. He wasn't in a position to help anyone, let alone a stray dog. His savings were running low, his fridge was nearly empty, and the future looked anything but bright. But something in the creature's gaze reached deep inside him, stirring an ache he hadn't realized was there. The dog's pain mirrored his own, an unspoken understanding passing between them. His hands instinctively searched his pockets, a few crumpled bills and a handful of coins. It wasn't much, but it was enough. He glanced around and spotted a nearby convenience store, its fluorescent lights cutting through the rain. Without overthinking, he jogged inside, the warmth hitting him like a shock after the biting cold outside. He scanned the shelves and finally settled on a can of dog food and a small loaf of bread, enough to share, though he wasn't sure if the dog would trust him enough to eat. As he returned to the park, his heart pounded. Would the dog still be there, or had it disappeared like everything else in his life? But as he approached, he saw the small form still huddled under the tree, still trembling. Slowly, he crouched down a few feet away, careful not to startle it. With gentle movements, he placed the food on the damp ground, then backed away, giving the dog space. At first, the dog didn't move. Its weary eyes flickered between Michael and the food, uncertainty etched into its every motion. Hunger, however, was a powerful force, and after several long moments, the dog took a cautious step forward, then another. It sniffed the air, its small black nose twitching before finally lowering its head to take a tentative bite. Relief flooded through Michael. He wasn't sure why, but seeing the dog eat lifted a weight off his chest. He sat there in silence, watching as the creature devoured the meal with increasing urgency. For the first time in weeks, he felt something other than emptiness. A fragile connection had formed, barely there, but real nonetheless. As the rain continued to fall, Michael knew he couldn't just leave the dog behind. Not when he had seen the same loneliness reflected in its eyes. But convincing the dog to trust him was another matter entirely. Would it follow him? Would it even let him come closer? The thought of rejection, even from a stray, made him hesitate. But then again, he had nothing left to lose. Taking a deep breath, he whispered, "Hey buddy, let's get out of the rain." No longer alone. The rain had faded into a light drizzle as Michael stood up, his eyes still fixed on the small, shivering dog. He didn't expect it to wag its tail or follow him home like in some old movie. He just hoped for one thing, that it would choose to come with him. He took slow steps away. 1 second, 2 seconds. Then he heard it, a faint rustling against the wet ground. Turning back, he saw it. The dog had stood up, its legs trembling, its eyes still hesitant, but it had moved. Michael crouched down, extending his hand, his voice soft. "Come on, buddy." This time, the dog didn't hesitate for long. It took one step, then another, until its cold, wet nose brushed against Michael's fingers. Warmth spread through Michael's chest. Gently, he scooped the small creature into his arms, letting the rain soak into his clothes as he walked home. Michael's apartment was small, but warm. He placed Buddy near the heater, wrapping a towel around its frail body. At first, the dog remained wary, its eyes filled with doubt. But as the days passed, as warm meals replaced hunger and soft words replaced silence, the distance between them slowly faded. The first time Buddy ate in front of him, Michael smiled. The third day, it stood a little closer. By the seventh day, for the first time, Buddy rested its head against his leg. "Buddy," Michael repeated naturally, knowing that from now on, neither of them would be alone. But happiness is fragile. One night, exhausted, Michael forgot to close the backyard gate. By the time he realized it, Buddy was gone. His heart pounded. He ran outside, calling Buddy's name into the quiet night. Fear gripped his chest. Had Buddy run away? Had he been too afraid to stay? Then he heard it. A soft whimper. Under the dim glow of a streetlight, Buddy stood there, his fur dirty, his eyes filled with uncertainty. He had the chance to leave, but yet he had returned. Michael swallowed the lump in his throat and slowly reached out, just like the first time. This time, let's go home together. Without hesitation, Buddy stepped forward, pressing his head into Michael's hand. That night, under a sky full of stars, they walked home. And this time, they knew they had found family in each other. This English version keeps the emotional depth and warmth of your original story. Let me know if you'd like any tweaks.